Guten Abend, that is good evening in German. I had learned the language, German language, a long time ago, all thanks to the governor of the prison at Oxford. Yes, you heard it right. My name is James Rodrigues Evans, and I was an inmate at the Oxford prison. I liked picking things without anybody noticing. They called it kleptomania. They caught me and put me in prison, but I escaped always. I escaped thrice, and they gave me a nickname too, Evans the Break. But when I was sent to the prison at Oxford, the governor there was very, very smart. He did everything that was possible to keep me inside the jail, inside the prison, and my escape was not possible. I had resigned to my fate. And one day I learned that as an inmate in the prison, I can learn the language German and give an exam. I thought it is a good idea to add an academic qualification. So I told the same thing to the governor, and he was a very happy man. He thought I changed, and he made all arrangements for me to learn German. A tutor was sent, and I realized I was the only person who was learning the German. And I knew that if I had to learn the language outside the prison, it would cost me a lot. 6 months I learned, and I was ready to take the O-level exam. When I told this to the governor, he immediately made arrangements. He spoke to the people at the examination board and arranged for me to take the exam sitting right in my cell. My cell was a small, dingy room with a small bunk. It was in the D wing of the prison, and outside the cell, there were two heavy doors, one inner and one outside. They made sure that I did not have a chance to escape. On the D-Day, the day I was giving my exam, 30 a.m. in the morning, Senior Prison Officer Jackson and newly recruited Stephens came into my cell. As soon as Jackson looked at me, I saw his expression and I understood he did not like what he saw. I was wearing a grubby vest tucked into a equally grubby pants, and I was unshaven too. I told him, I'm just going to shave. I will shave. And as if that reminded him something, he looked at the young officer and said, take the razor as soon as he finishes shaving. They took away my nail scissors, they took away my nail file, they did not leave anything in the cell which they thought I would use to escape from them. And when I came back after shaving, I saw that they had put some two chairs and small tables there for me to write my exam. And as soon as I came out, the newly recruited officer took away the razor. I looked at Jackson and I asked him, do you really have to bug me? Looking at the small microphones that were fixed right on the wall. He looked at me and he said, we are not taking any risk. And the governor will be listening to everything that is happening here. Don't play a fast one. What am I going to do? Is there any chance for me to escape this prison? None at all. He looked at the small hat I was wearing and he said, that has to go. I sighed and I said, see, this hat has brought some luck. And now, since I am going to write an exam, I need all the luck. Let me keep it on. He thought for a second and he said, okay. I knew there was a soft spot under that stern exterior. Both of them left, and after a few minutes came back in with the examiner for the day. Reverend Stuart McCleary. He was a short man of well-built man, I would say, and he was wearing a overcoat, a long overcoat. He had a clerical hat and a small beard. Stevens made the introductions, and as soon as the introduction was done, Jackson called him out. They spoke in hushed tones. I could not hear what they were saying. They came back inside and then they told McCleary that they are going to check him as well. They thought I might use something which the examiner bought innocently with him to escape the prison. Jackson frisked him. They opened the small briefcase that the examiner bought with him. There was an envelope containing the question paper. There was the newspaper, and there was a small paper knife, which Jackson immediately took away. And there was something very strange in that briefcase. It was a semi-inflated tube. Jackson looked at McCleary sarcastically and said, are you planning to go on for a swim after this? There was nothing changed in the expression of McCleary. He just looked at him and he said, I suffer from hemorrhoids, and if I have to sit for longer hours, the tube helps me. Jackson said sorry, and both of them left the room. Stephens was just standing outside the cell, and it was 9:18 at that time. The examiner gave me the paper and he asked me to fill some details. On the left side, he asked me to write the name of the paper, 012. On the top right hand corner, he asked me to write the index number 313. And below that, just below that, he asked me to write the number of the center, 271. And he also told me he will exactly tell me when to start writing the exam, and he will give me a heads up 5 minutes before the exam, before I have to stop writing. I said okay. At 9:25, I started writing my exam. At 9:40, Stephens rushed in with a small slip in his hand. It was a correction slip. The examiner looked at it and told me, stop writing. I have to tell you something. There is a correction in the question paper. On page 3, line 15, the fourth word is not Goldenen Loven, but it is Goldeen Loven. What difference does that make? It did make a lot of difference. And then I kept writing, and Stevens was looking inside the cell every 2 minutes just to see everything was all right. At 10:40 a.m., I felt a little chilly, and I asked McCleary if I could just put a blanket over me. That kind man said yes. I put a blanket and I kept writing. At 11:20, he told me that I had only 5 more minutes. At 11:22, Stephens got a call from someone and I heard him talk outside the cell. 11:25, I was asked to stop writing. Stevens escorted McCleary out of the prison. But I knew he would come back to check on me. And he did. When he came into the cell, he saw McCleary sprawled over the chair and bleeding from his head. He immediately alerted Jackson and the governor. All of them came rushing in, and McCleary was holding the question paper in his hand and he was telling, I know where he is. I know where he's gone. I can catch him. You have to call the police fast because there is something superimposed on the last paper of the question paper. I know where he is. So the governor understood, and he understood that this man knew what he's saying. So he sent him with the police. But I had already escaped. The governor was not only a smart man, he was a very kind man too. He called the hospital to check on McCleary, only to know that there was no one by name McCleary admitted into the hospital. It did not take long. He rushed to McCleary's house and he found him there, as expected, gagged and bound. And he had not left his house this morning. The real McCleary. Now, it did not take long for him to understand that I was not impersonating the McCleary escorted outside the prison. I was impersonating the McCleary who stayed back. Now, you all must be thinking, why did I have to do that? I could have just walked out of the prison. But what about my friend who became McCleary? Both of us had to escape, right? Yeah. And if you remember, I had told you that McCleary was wearing a coat and a clerical hat. He was wearing two coats and two clerical hats. And when I put the blanket, I changed. I put the coat and the hat. And it was very difficult to shave my head with a razor. And the beard gave me an itch. But it was all worth it. I was a free man walking the streets of Oxford. I reached my hotel, the Golden Lion, went up to my room, opened the door, and I got the shock of my life. Sitting there on the bed was the governor. It took me only 2 minutes to get out of that shock. And I looked at him and I said, it's the correction slip, right? One more mistake. I left the correction. I left the question paper. I left the correction slip there. And actually, the correction slip was not necessary because after getting out of the prison, I could have checked into any hotel. But it was very important to know when the examination began so that we can arrange for the call to Stevens just 5 minutes before to tell him to escort McCleary out of the prison. And the correction slip served that purpose. The governor looked at me and said, yes, it's not only you who knows German. There are others also who understand a little bit of German. I asked him, the correction slip said the hotel's name is Golden Lion, but there are many hotels with the same name here. How did you know that this is the hotel where you'll find me? He looked at me and said, just like you. You remember? You wrote those numbers on the paper, 012, 313, 271, the coordinates of the map to tell me which hotel you'll be in. Just like you, he said. Smart, very smart. He asked me, but how did you manage the blood? I did not want to give away my trade secrets. I just smiled. He said, "Has it got to do something with the tube?" Ah, this is a smart man. I had to tell him, yes, the tube which came with McCleary, it contained pig's blood. And to stop it from clotting, we had to mix a little bit of human blood and some chemicals. He sighed and he asked me, "How did you manage all this? You did not have any visitors, but you sent a tutor to me to teach German, didn't you?" He was shocked beyond words, and I could see a glint of admiration also. He escorted me to the police jeep. I sat in the jeep and I just looked at him and I said, "Are there any other exams that I can take while I'm in the prison?" He just shook his head and did not say a word. As soon as the jeep turned into the highway, the police officer who was sitting across me unlocked my handcuffs and screamed at the driver, "Faster before they come behind us and catch us." I had the last laugh, and I'm here today to tell you my story. Thank you.